As Mark was kind enough to introduce me as, my name is KEIICHI Matsuda. My interest is about emerging technologies, but I'm really interested in augmented reality specifically. I think augmented reality can lead us into a new future of spatial design, and what we've seen so far with the examples of mobile AR and even sort of wearable AR is really only the tip of the iceberg insofar as what is possible. I really think that augmented reality can be the sort of next step in our sort of post-human evolution and fundamentally change the way that we construct and consume space. Can you see these slides?
They're a little dark.
They're a little dark? Well...
yes, it's come up. It just came up. I think there's a lag.
Okay. So the sort of augmented reality I'm interested in is, immersive, always-on, head-mounted augmented reality. I think as long as we're dealing with phones and physical devices that you have to hold, we're never really going to get to a stage where it's possible to sort of use augmented reality in the way that I'm thinking. Hang on, what's going on here? Okay, sorry. You still with me?
Yep, we're here. We are here.
Hello?
We're here.
I'm good, sorry. Okay. My interest is, as I said, emerging technologies, but my background is in architecture. And when I was studying architecture, I felt very frustrated that as designers we were unable to engage with all of the really interesting questions and conversations that are surrounding, the internet and communication and social media and virtuality. And architects sometimes try and engage with that by making buildings that change color depending on something, but it always feels a little bit clunky, a little bit disingenuous. So I was really happy to stumble across augmented reality in around 2009, because it's a really fascinating way to blend spatial design with information from the internet. It allows architecture to become a part of that much wider discussion about how our future is going to work with all of these communication technologies. So I'm going to show you some of my drawings from the Augmented Hyperreality project, as well as the films, which I guess many of you have probably seen before, but we're going to talk about them, so I'm going to show them to you again anyway. The idea with these films is really to be kind of propositional and form a counterpoint to those sort of glossy corporate augmented reality videos that you see coming out from lots of big tech companies. I've got a real problem that most of the time when we introduce to a new technology, it's the companies who are trying to sell it to us that tell us about it, and it means there's really no room for any critical debate about what the consequences of those technologies are. So with my work, I'm really hoping that I'm able to try and give people the tools and the sort of critical and mental faculties to be able to have a sort of informed debate about the kind of pros and cons of these technologies, and therefore make their own opinion. Anyway, if you wouldn't mind putting on the first film. I can do it from here, but it might be a bit weird.
Okay. I have to cut out of the screen sharing, probably.
Well, in that case, you can put on the first and the second one. And if you can keep the audio, can you keep the audio on me?
Yeah.
Well, I can sort of talk over them.
Okay, so you texted this to me?
No, I'll do it now, sorry.
Sure. You just send it through the chat, I can.
Sure. So I'll tell you what, I'll just send you both.
Sure.
Put them both on, I'll join you after. There's number one. There's number two.
Alright, here we go. Number one is played.
of teeth. Fill kettle with 2.3 VG tips tea bag with a green leg. Good. Now get the skim milk from the refrigerator. Carefully pour boiling water into the mug. You're doing great. While you're waiting for the tea to brew, why not browse some recipe suggestions to help you decide on do and
Excellent. We just finished the first one. Go to the second one now. So it's the wallpaper?
Oh no, that's it should be the second Vimeo link up there. Sorry, I just sent you some other videos for later.
Oh, okay. Alright. Oh, sorry. My bad.
1429454.
Got it. There. Awesome.
Okay, we're back.
Yeah, we're back.
Okay, good. So those films, especially the first one, provoked a very kind of mixed reaction on the internet, and they did really well, and they inspired a lot of interesting conversations. But some people were really excited about the possibilities that immersive augmented reality could give, whereas some people were kind of horrified about this idea of the invasion of privacy and the invasion of the home. And I chose the home kind of on purpose because it's this very private and personal space, which makes it kind of seem more extreme, but it's the home has been a sort of target for the media for a long time. Back for like radio and then TV, and because it is so personal, it makes it a very sort of sensitive but alluring site for invasion by the media. But what was great about those films and what it gave me was that it encouraged so much debate around, if people think this is a good thing or a bad thing. And I started to think that actually, through design fiction, through making speculative projects like this, it's really possible to shape opinion. And eventually those ideas go back to the people who are developing these technologies, like you guys. So, I'm sort of hoping that by watching these videos that people who are developing technologies will start to think a little more about the effect that these technologies are going to have, and not just based around what's going to sell, but also be around what's going to potentially help people, or rather than what's going to make life worse for people. Anyway, back to the presentation. So the first and most obvious design challenge I had was interface, because augmented reality is a fantastic way to sort of look at content or listen to content, basically to consume content. But in terms of feeding back into that system and controlling things, it's a little more difficult. We haven't really got a good system doing that yet. And you might have noticed in the first film there's a kind of virtual keyboard that's kind of suspended in midair. And the more I thought about it with the second one, it seemed more and more ridiculous, because it's kind of this mind-blowing technology and we're just using basically a typewriter to input text into that. So I started to look for a different sort of model, different precedent, and the cockpit proved to be quite an interesting one for me. I like the cockpit because it's sort of laid out in a very spatial way, so you have...
Hello? I think we lost you. Oh no. We're back? We lost you for a
yes,
second.
back. Yeah,
So,
where did you...
You're talking about the cockpit. It laid out as a very interesting spatial...
All right.
I think we have to
Back.
switch, yeah,
how do I do this? Yeah.
the plus side.
I had it a minute ago. Share screen again. Okay. Can you see the screen?
It's coming up. Give it a sec.
Okay.
Yes, we're back. We're back.
All right, great. So yeah, the cockpit's very interesting for me because it's a spatial mapping out of all of the functions that you would need to control and modulate your world. And you can key into the spatial memory that we as human beings have to be able to associate locations and certain gestures with functions. So it makes it quite an efficient system, and it kind of mapped out into the film as this guy here, with this kind of personal cockpit of all his information, which you can both control and display. Going back one slide, having a completely immersive 3D augmented reality gives us lots of opportunities for interface, which are sort of above and beyond the 2D interfaces that we're used to dealing with on an everyday basis. For one thing, you have a Z-axis, you have a depth that you can use to map to some kind of information source. And you also it also surrounds you completely. So in this example, which was a kind of social network module, the updates come in close to you and then they recede over time. So there's a kind of logic to it. But also, you can organize your contacts in different channels that you're subscribed to in different parts of the room. So maybe on one side I've got my friends, on the other side I've got family, and in another section of the room I've got my co-workers. So I don't need to mess around with using different filters or things like that. I can just turn around and I know what sort of content I can expect to find there. Picture this one. Cool. Yeah. So this is a picture of my kitchen all those years ago, three and a half years ago when I shot the first film. Much to the dismay of my housemates at the time, I had to cover the entire kitchen in these little black dots. So those were actually there, and it was because I needed to use them for motion tracking. And I think, if you're using like SLAM or some other kind of computer vision for tracking, you kind of also need those reference points if you have these vast expanses of white walls. Well, these are not exactly vast expanses, but you know what I mean. But I was very interested in this, that you have, I had to modify my physical environment to be able to speak to my device, which in turn relayed information to me. So I'd actually changed the physical nature of my environment in order to support a kind of virtual mediated encounter. And of course, this is a very old sort of thing now, but this was from Japan, back 3 years ago or something. A QR code on the building. It's kind of interesting because, again, this is not something that you can read with your naked eye. It's something that it speaks to your device and your device speaks to you. And that reveals something that's very important about augmented reality, is that it's something that's perceived on an individual basis. So we can all see different realities. It's not like we all have to share the same view of the world. So it translates into something that I call subjective space, the idea that our perception of the environment could be something that's extremely subjective and different for everybody. And to some extent that's already true, because we all have portable devices now, and we have kind of ubiquitous support networks for that in the form of Wi-Fi and electricity, etc. It means that we're able to kind of adapt our environment to serve whatever purpose we want. It might sound like an obvious point, but now we can go into a coffee shop and use that coffee shop as a meeting room, or we can use it to play games in, or we can use it to chat with friends on a more informed basis, and we're able to have control of the program, control of the function of the space. And before portable devices around, that just wasn't the case. So our cities are in this state of change at the moment. As I said before, I studied architecture, and one of the great architects is this guy, NYU'S who you guys may know. He did a lot of buildings in Chicago especially, one of the great modernist architects. And he had this very famous maxim, which was form follows function. And that maxim has been used a lot throughout design, the idea being that you understand what the function of the object or the thing is, and then you design to fit that. And of course that makes sense for lots of things, but when applied to architecture, which is how NYU'S originally meant it, it doesn't really apply anymore because we don't know what function the space is supposed to serve. It could really be anything. So this idea of form and function is becoming kind of unstuck. And augmented reality gives us a very interesting if complicated problem for architects, because if you can be in any environment, if you can change your environment to be anything, what would you change it into? What's this ideal space that people are looking for? I got really interested in this question of ideal space, and I started to ask a lot of people about it. And well, I was at architecture school at the time, so I got lots of answers, quite varied answers. But a lot of people wanted to be in very specific architectural surroundings that they could design themselves, or they'd like to be in a kind of replication of a kind of Louis XIV mansion, or they'd like to be in nature all the time, or something like that. But to me, all of these answers seem to be a little like they were trying to reproduce something from the past, and they weren't doing anything really original. So after some thought, I decided that my idea of an ideal space is this. So this is someone's workstation, so their cubicle, and they've customized that cubicle with posters from their travels and their favorite books, and they've got some little flyers from the sports teams they support, and they've really customized that space. And if you look at the computer as well, you can see they've customized their desktop and have some weird kind of layout of icons on their desktop. And I'm sure they've got some completely idiosyncratic filing system that nobody else can understand. So I started to think that idea more exciting than this kind of idea of a fixed utopia. And this is how that kind of subjective space played out in the second film. So this guy is, appropriating the restaurant to be his kind of personal room, and he's taking around, even his books and his wallpaper and everything with him, so he could feel at home at any time. The other thing about the augmented city, as I've kind of imagined it, is that it's made of many, many different layers. And the idea is that you can't really, it's like the internet, you can't perceive the whole thing at one time. You have to kind of tread your path through that. And so the augmented studio is the same. It's made up of a series of layers here, and you can, in the film, you can kind of choose what you see through this module thing, which is called channel browser. Here I was kind of trying to understand how you could make a kind of spatial interface that was like an object, like a sculpture, that you could manipulate with your hands, and as you did so, it would make decisions. So I like the idea that you could kind of subconsciously look at the shape of an interface and understand exactly what it was asking you. It's just sort of one idea for that. But I guess the main point here is the way that the augmented studio is organized, like layers of content that you're able to aggregate. So this aggregation could look like this. If this guy is really into late Georgian architecture in London, but he also likes street art and he also likes flowers, if that was your particular combination, then you could dress up your study to look like this. So it's not, everybody sees a different environment based on what it is, and there is this kind of element of Zen philosophy where it's who kind of you perceive your environment as a reflection of yourself. This is taken quite literally, obviously. So this process is called aggregation, but there's an opposite to that as well. And that opposite is broadcast, i.e. what you show to the world about yourself. This is like an early production drawing from that project, but you can see this lady has kind of augmented herself with lots of different profile information, and people who are meeting her and looking at her can simultaneously perceive her physical and virtual identities. I'll just show you these quick things. This is a project I did, which I didn't actually publish until very recently. It was a collaboration with a fashion journalist who had all these different fashion contacts, and she wanted to do a collaboration. So we just did this quick project, which is trying to understand how fashion and augmented reality play together. So in this example, she's kind of matched her, this is more of a kind of businessy sort of thing. You can see that she's limited her profile information to a very simple kind of business card thing at the top, and everything else is a functional thing, but all of the aesthetics are tied in with the clothing as well. I think this is an interesting possibility. But this character is my favorite because she's got her jacket on there, which is sort of part physical and part virtual. I like the idea that in the future you might buy a product and it might also have a kind of virtual element to that. So designers would have much more kind of tools to be able to play with, and many more possibilities to be able to explore through animation and many different things. Before I go on, I'd just like to show you, in fact, I might skip this bit. How are we doing for time? Oh, not so good. Okay, let me, Mark, would you be able to play the video called Cell?
Sure. This one? Oh,
Cell for later.
sorry. Which one is it again?
Yeah.
It's called Cell, and it says Cell for later, and it's
Gotcha,
been
okay.
address.
Yeah,
And is it possible for me to talk over this?
yeah, totally.
Yeah? Okay, great.
One sec. I'll tell you when it's going.
Okay. And you can turn the volume off on that video.
Alright, so volume off.
Okay. So this is Cell, which is an installation I did at the end of 2010, so quite a long time ago, with in collaboration with James Alabank, who's a guy I often collaborate with in the UK. Cell is a kind of extension of that idea of this digital aura, this sort of collection of sort of keywords and information about yourself that just float around you in physical space. So Cell takes that a step further and acts like a kind of virtual mirror. So as you walk in front of it, these keywords kind of float down and build up a picture of an identity. And at the moment, these are kind of, they're just fictional identities. We couldn't get the information for that person himself, but actually I think that we're at the stage now that if we had a bit of fun, and we could probably do that without too much trouble. So, I'm sort of quite interested in this idea that everybody has this digital aura. All of you guys sitting in your class, you have, each one of you has a digital aura of all the information that you link to yourself online, and then any kind of profile information you've ever written. And I just sort of wonder what would happen if that information was freely available to anybody to access at any time. And it might seem like having that information in public would be something which is quite like objectionable to a lot of people. But in fact, it could also usher in a new age of kind of communication and collaboration, where people on the street in the city, instead of seeing like cold and anonymous faces, you see people who you have an instant relationship with, who you understand your kind of mutual likes and dislikes, or if you have any mutual friends or like the same band, so everyone is suddenly relatable. And that could do a lot if you think of like business networking, not to mention dating. So how are we doing? Is that finished with the video?
We're finished, yep.
Yeah, okay, so let's switch. Like, I'm just going to show you a few other little projects. Should I show you? Sorry, all the excitement about the Kickstarter thing, I'm not very well prepared.
You're really close, really close.
We're very close now. Okay, this is Prism. Prism is an installation I did last summer at the London Design Festival. This is the kind of flagship piece for the festival. And it was installed in the tallest tower of London's Victoria and Albert Museum, which is a very famous museum for textiles and kind of craft. But they hold the London Design Festival there every year, which is a big event.
I've been there.
Sorry?
I've been there.
Oh yeah, it's great. This is in the absolute top of the tower as you come in through the entrance. And it's the first time it was ever open to the public, so we had an absolute nightmare trying to get everything in there and all the health and safety requirements done. And I'll show you a video in a minute, or Mike will show you a video in a minute to sort of show you how we got it all up there, which is through that hole, which is about 30 meters above the floor. So anyway, it was quite a big deal. But anyway, Prism, the idea of Prism was to try and reframe the city. Normally we think about the city as this kind of collection of bricks and mortar and glass and concrete and houses and businesses and roads, but I wanted to try and reframe the city as this sort of network of communications and sensors and machines talking to each other all the time. And there are these kind of invisible data flows that are happening around us all the time, but we're not always able to perceive those, so I thought it would be interesting if we were able to do that. So Prism feeds on I think it's 55 different data feeds from throughout London. So we've got things like, obviously, the weather controls are easy to get. We can see the wind direction, the level of the Thames at any particular time, and the concentration of different pollutants in the air at any one time. We also have some great information from Transport for London, so you can see how many people are on the tube at any one time. And we have these kind of bike rental scheme here as well. You may have it in New York as well, that you can sort of use a smart card to rent a bike. So we're able to see, whenever anyone takes a bike out of the station, we get an update on the sculpture. And we even had some live energy monitoring from some government buildings that this organisation called Carbon Culture do. So we're able to see in real time how much energy each of these buildings is using. So you can just about pick out on the bottom left of that there's a black kind of square, which is the door for number 10 Downing Street, which is where the Prime Minister lives. So every time David Cameron makes a cup of tea for himself, we should be able to get an update on this on the sculpture. So I can show you a quick video now. Oh, I should also mention that all of these data feeds were projected onto the surface of the installation as kind of as visualized things, so you can see the bikes there in the middle. And all of these visualization patches were made by a big network of volunteers in processing. The idea, I guess, was to try and make a sort of dynamic patchwork that was made by a lot of different people. And I asked all of the coders to take inspiration from the collection of textiles at the V&A to design their patches. So it's kind of a drawing on data from London, but it's also drawing on the visual language of the V&A as well, so it's a very contextual piece. Mark, have you been able to show the final video, which is one on the wallpaper website? There's a very strange photograph of me on it. Try and click through that quickly if you can.
Cool, one sec. Here we go. Volume on or off?
Yeah, you might as well go on for this one, it's good music.
Okay, cool. All right. Is it a video?
Yeah, you should be able to. It's a website, but you should be able to click on a video. Is it not there?
There's a play button. It looks like it's a still image on the wallpaper site. I'm seeing an image view. It looks like it's a JPEG, but it says save image.
If I can find it.
Sorry about this.
Okay, in that case, I will send you something different. It's mine. Okay, I'll tell you what, I'll get that. I'll try and get that video back up, and I'll send you guys a link if you'd like to watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, post it on the blog or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So, in white around the guy, the cockpit, which is, what the user uses to mediate and control their environment. On the next level from there, you've got what I call the field, which is all of the the kind of location-based apps and overlays and advertisements and anything else which exists between the user and the sort of physical limits of the city.
Yep.
And then you've got the skin, which I see as a kind of overlay of physical architecture. I think that potentially in the future, the profession of architecture will split into two camps. On one hand, you'll have the people who are designing the physical infrastructure of the city, which is all based around engineering and about safety and making sure that buildings are eco-friendly. But this profession is more of the kind of side which is about legality and about logistics and economics and politics and planning. But on the other side, you'll have the more kind of creative, artistic and experiential side, which is in the virtual layer. And of course, you'd be able to overlay those kind of functions and those aesthetics onto any of these physical environments. So I think it's possible that in the future, the buildings become much more simple and much sort of cheaper and more environmentally friendly to produce, while the outer skins of the building can be taken into the augmented layer and basically have no limit between them. And then, this is the final layer is the kind of physical infrastructure. And I've drawn it here as something which is kind of all the windows being boarded up and it's just full of pipes. This is kind of dystopian move, but it maybe doesn't have to be like that. This is a kind of equation written by the writer Charles Leavitt, Peter, which is about something he calls cloud culture. And I think it's quite interesting because he wrote it about video and the democratization surrounding kind of consumer video and being able to upload that to the internet. And it goes like this. It says, more cultural heritage stored in digital form, plus more accessible to more people, plus people better equipped with more tools to add creativity to the collection, equals an exponential growth in mass cultural expression. And that's what he calls cloud culture. I think this is an interesting thing because a lot of people fear that with the rise of globalization, that places are becoming more homogenized and that there's becoming less kind of local characteristics with different areas. But I think augmented reality could really turn this on its head with more local content being produced by people who actually live there. Let's see if I've got more slide after this. Well, okay. So at the moment our cities are designed and built by architects and planners and developers and engineers and landowners, and really the people who actually live in those cities have very little to say about their urban environments. I remember when I was working in architects, I worked at a couple of places that I'd never even been to the site before. We were working on these massive projects in China, and I'd never even been there. And I think that's a really kind of crazy situation that we put ourselves into now, that the people who live in cities have really lost control of their environments. So I think this part of augmented reality is something that's really worth exploring and something that could be interesting. Just check this off. I'm just gonna stop sharing my screen.
Cool.
Hello?
Hello.
Oh, okay, sorry. So yeah, I mean, that's the kind of a brief sort of run through the augmented hyperreality project as it stands so far. But as you know, the Kickstarter campaign is just about to be funded. I think we've just broken £250 away, so we're 99% there. I'm actually in Medellin in Colombia at the moment, where we're shooting the new film, and I'm shooting it here because I think the city is a very interesting kind of case study for looking at how technology and rapid technological progression can impact on a culture with some kind of much deeper social issues which are kind of persistent and maybe don't always run very smoothly together with technology. So the stories that I'm making in my new film series are going to all be very human stories about, from the perspective, each one from the perspective of a different character within the city. So they'll be across all different kind of socioeconomic classes, and hopefully give you a really good sort of cross-section through different experiences of life in the city. And they are very local and about this city, but I'm hoping that you'll be able to apply those lessons across the board to any different cities. So anyway, I'll put the URL for the Kickstarter campaign, if you guys are interested to take a look, is hyper-reality.co, code for Colombia. And yeah, I've got a video on there you can look at as well. And if you look at the updates as well, I just put up an update as well with another video, and you can see some other cool stuff on there.
They're all looking at it. They're all looking at it.
Great, thank you very much. So yeah, I'm going to be posting updates, kind of just behind the scene updates on there. So if you guys just want to pledge $1, that's fine, and you'll be able to get access to all of the kind of behind the scenes workings. I'm looking to bring the first film out in around the beginning of March, and the rest of the films will follow throughout the year. Anyway, thanks very much.
Oh, I have a very quick question before we close.
Yes.
I love the direction you were talking about in Arnie. We were kind of going into a little bit what was going to happen in the actual movie, and you were talking about kind of how I loved your insight was dead on. Kind of the comparison of what Facebook has done to our culture right now, and what will happen once we kind of have these wearable technologies, where the technology starts to dissolve and it becomes part of our daily experience. Could you talk about that very quickly?
About the stories, or about kind of social media?
Social media, like you were saying, when she takes the glasses off, she realizes that she has to put them back. It was brilliant. I really loved it.
Yes, that's pretty going to be the second film. That's my character Marley. And she's kind of based on one of the fashion images that I showed earlier, of the girl with the jacket, and that girl, her job is to be a kind of a blogger, and you know how bloggers basically sell their taste in return for sponsorship if you're a professional blogger. So I've imagined Marley as a kind of augmented reality blogger whose job it is to kind of walk around the city and be noticed by people and show her excellent sense of style, and to basically be a celebrity who's sponsored to do this kind of walking around the city. It's based on the kind of Victorian idea of the dandy, and the dandies were this kind of group of people, mostly men actually, who walked around the city just to be seen and to sort of experience the sort of social urban life of the city. But I'm really interested how that could be updated with augmented reality. But yeah, part of her story is that she makes her life completely public in order to be able to, attain this level of celebrity. So she's being followed around by surveillance drones the whole time, so that she kind of invites to sort of broadcast things. She, constantly posts things online, and she surrenders all of her privacy to that world. And her kind of problem comes when it's discovered that her fiancé has been unfaithful to her, but it's discovered by her fans. So there's this kind of awkward scene where it's going to be her and her fiancé in an augmented reality restaurant, and he won't have realized that she knows about this, so that there'll be this kind of miscommunication within the film. And at the end of the day, she's very upset because not because he's betrayed her, but because he's allowed all these other people to find out. And of course, yeah, the culmination of that does come when it all becomes too much for her and she takes it off. But because this is like her livelihood now, and this is the sort of the fuel that she feeds on, she ends up needing to put them back on. And although she's going to be a kind of annoying character at the start of the film, I think at the end people should respect her kind of real strength of character and being able to put that back on and sort of face the situation and spin it to her advantage. But I think, you know, for a lot of us, I'm not really so active on social media, but like people who are younger than me and growing up are kind of, it's such a normal part of everyday life now that we're kind of almost expected to be using social media now. So I'm sort of interested in what kind of effect that could have on people, especially going through difficult and times where they need some privacy. And if extensive networks and surveillance continue to proliferate in the future, which they show all signs of doing, it seems like that problem is only going to become more exacerbated.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Great.
So do we have any questions? Would we be willing to take a question or two?
Sure.
Do we have anybody with questions?
Yeah.
TJ, so you want to get up and say hi? So go over to the camera. You can kind of face
Sorry,
yourself.
could you turn the camera on? Because
Yeah.
I can't see anything.
Okay, here, one sec.
Sorry.
Here, so TJ, why don't you come out
Oh, yeah.
front here? He can't see you.
It's a small question anyway. Yeah. Can you see me now?
Yeah, I can see you. Pixelated blur, but I can see you.
Yeah. No, I was just wondering as to like what do you think? I mean, how far along in the future would this actually happen? Like, you know, like.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I wanted to know. And like we already talked about the impact and everything, but like, you know, as someone who's studying augmented reality, I would really like to know like how far along. Like that would be my main question.
Oh, because you want, sorry?
How far along in the future, like how many years from now on, could this actually be a part of our daily lives? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. I think, well, technically, you guys probably know better than me, but I think that technically, it's not so far that we'll be able to have, you know, like positioned objects within a head-mounted display. You know, I think maybe technically we're talking something like 5 years, but the thing is, it's not just a technical thing, it's a cultural thing, and it's to do with the infrastructure and like the habits of people as well. So I think for the infrastructure to get to a level where, you know, we're able to, you know, wear these things and have them connect to the internet, and we have enough services that support that and enough things that make it useful to us, we're talking a little bit of a longer scale, but I'm thinking it's going to be less than 15 years. You know, this is a real a distinct possibility that could happen within them. But technology is very unpredictable, and I'm not really trying to predict it per se. I guess the idea is to try and understand the possible consequences of where we're going and try and give developers and consumers and, you know, everybody a kind of idea about where we might be heading to be able to try and generate more discussion. And I think that through discussion we can start to form some kind of consensus about what kind of world we do want to live in. And then that puts us in a much better position where we are now, where a lot of people really have no idea what the future could be like, or even what they want it to be like.
Alright, okay. Thanks.
Anybody else? Anybody else? Questions?
Behind my hand, if I don't, unless I am able to kind of cut my hand out essentially and overlay that on top, it's going to appear like that. So that can be really, really time consuming, and you know, you're going frame by frame, like, you know, when you cut out something on Photoshop, it's like that, but for every frame. So that's an incredibly time consuming thing that Mocha makes a little easier. But aside from that, it's yeah, everything's in After Effects, and I built my own. Oh, I can show you my 3D rig. Where is it?
Yeah, show the rig. Show the rig.
This is I'm shooting on these GoPros, which are little action cameras you guys might probably know about.
Yep,
they
I know.
use a lot for extreme sports, and they give you a really wide-angle field of view. But they're also really small and discreet, which is good because I'm going to be walking around the streets of Medellin with minimal security, so I don't want to like attract too much attention.
Put it on! Put it on! We're gonna see.
I haven't got my.
Oh no! Okay. Yeah. He had it on for Arnie. It was awesome. It was really great. It's okay.
Oh, I haven't got the head strap with you, but just imagine like that. So these are. I just bought 2 of them. And just by having 2 identical cameras, it's possible to make a 3D film. It's not as hard as everyone thinks it is. But the problem is that there's no GoPro rig available for this model for a 3D rig, so I had to 3D print my own. So these are designed in collaboration with a guy I know in the UK, Grant Frazier, who is a product designer. And they're basically it's a 3D printed, this white bit is 3D printed, and it allows you to hold the cameras in the correct position. So I've got like 3 different types of these ones to change the distance between the lenses, and I'm going to be open sourcing the design of that. So if anyone wants to have a play on that, they can buy a couple of GoPros, which are not, they're expensive-ish, but they're not massively expensive. And you can make some 3D or augmented reality videos of your own.
Awesome. So, final question. When you were at Arnie, you mentioned you might possibly do like tutorial workshops on some of your filmmaking styles or something. Is there any way you'd consider coming back next semester, or like via Skype or something? If you're in New York, we'd love to have you come in at some point, or we'd love you to do another lecture at some point.
For something like that, I much prefer to be there in person. So if you want to fly me over, you're very welcome.
Sure.
But otherwise, I am occasionally in New York, so I'll definitely be in touch, and that would be really fun. Yeah, it'd be great.
Awesome. Thank you very, very much. Everybody, give a big round for KEIICHI.
Okay.
Okay, cheers.
Bye-bye.